Homosexuality is illegal in Qatar. This month, the Qatari World Cup ambassador described homosexuality as damage in the mind.
This is a sickness! It is deviant, therefore we don't want it.
You are now listening to Pree Da Podcast with your host, Majaro.
What is up, my tribal people? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm your host, Majaro, and welcome back to another edition of Pree Da Video. And before we get started, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because we're trying to get to 100 subscribers before the end of the year. And by sharing this with your friends and family, that goes a long way into doing that. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, people. If you don't know, you probably know by now, it's the start of the World Cup. Yes, people, this World Cup that's been delayed for 2 years because of the Corona is finally here, and it's being hosted in Qatar. Let me say that again. It's hosted in Qatar. Qatar, whichever way you want to say it. It's controversial either way. We all know the stories of, the migrant workers being mistreated, poor working conditions. It was supposed to be in the summer, now it's in the winter, and because of that, football season has to be cut up in that 2 parts because of a tournament in the middle. Let's not even get talking about the human rights, gay rights, women's rights. All the rights have been put in question. And I've been looking over the coverage, and it's just been, Qatar this, Qatar that. Everyone's seen the videos of journalists being stopped from filming for some reason. Like, it was a madness still. I can't believe that actually happened.
We are live on Danish television, og der kan I se, nu bliver vi stoppet med at filme, og det er forholdene her. Mister, you invited the whole world to come here. Why can't we film? It's a public place. No, we don't need permit. But you can break the camera. You want to break the camera? Okay, you break the camera. Okay.
Everyone's had this say over the past few weeks about, oh my God, how is this happening? And the BBC is one of them. So let's have a look at what they got to say.
When Qatar won the right to host this World Cup, it made a promise.
We will make sure that this is a milestone in the history of the Middle East and a milestone for FIFA.
But questions remain about this tiny Gulf state being the host. Questions about human rights, the environment, and how FIFA reached this moment.
Qatar!
That choice was made by FIFA's executive committee. But even before the vote, there were issues. 2 members were suspended over allegations they'd offered to sell their votes. Since the decision, a whistleblower has alleged 3 members were offered cash for votes by Qatar. And US prosecutors have alleged that 2 more FIFA officials were offered and received bribe payments to vote for Qatar. The FIFA officials involved and Qatar have always denied the allegations. And a FIFA inquiry concluded votes weren't sold, but it also found potentially problematic conduct of specific individuals as part of Qatar's bid. What we can be sure of is that most of the committee that took this decision have since been accused, banned, or indicted over allegations of corruption or wrongdoing.
Right, the cheek of it, oh, nothing's here, nothing wrong's going on here, no one's taking bribe money, no one's taking underhanded money for this and that. But on the other hand, when the cameras aren't looking, you guys better fuck off, because we can't have you stinking up the joint. Bruv, how disgusting. Your employees or your members are taking bribes from an organization, and then you're saying, oh no, nothing's happening here, everything's on the up and up, but then you're going to suspend them and ban them for X amount of time. Like, come on, bro. Who you fooling? Come on. Like, we all know FIFA is corrupt. It's been corrupt for the longest. So, am I surprised? Hell no.
And once the decision was made, vast construction projects began. Transport, hotels, and stadiums. 7 new ones were built. hundreds of thousands of foreign workers, mostly from South Asia, were hired. And there have long been concerns about their treatment.
Workers were exposed to a whole range of different forms of exploitation, including having their passports confiscated, living in squalid accommodation, and in some cases it amounted to forced labour.
Qatar, though, has told the BBC it's improved conditions.
The work that has been done by the government in terms of labour reform, what the World Cup did was it accelerated that initiative. It was a catalyst for that change.
I call bullshit. Come on, bro. So you're telling me just because of the World Cup? No, actually, you're right. Just because of the World Cup, all these human rights and all these worker rights are being put in place. So you're telling me if the World Cup wasn't here, you still would have been flogging guys like it's, back in the day in Egypt to be building whatever buildings you want without any minimum wage or any nice house. That's what you are telling me. That if the World Cup wasn't here, these guys would still be in slave labour. These guys are moving mad.
There have been reforms. Human Rights Watch calls them significant, but it also highlights ongoing wage abuse and exorbitant recruitment fees. There are also widely shared claims that thousands of workers died building this World Cup. That's not supported by available evidence, though establishing the number of deaths is hard. Qatar says there have been 3 work-related deaths on World Cup sites. The UN's International Labour Organization says that is an underestimate.
You're trying to really deceive the public, only 3 people died in scorching weather trying to build these stadiums. Apparently there's about 9 stadiums. I don't think you need 9 different stadiums. I saw an Instagram video saying, yeah, there's going to be a match in this stadium, and then that stadium, and then in this stadium, and then there's going to be a new stadium for every round of the tournament. I'm like, how efficient is that going forward? How are you going to upkeep these stadiums? How are you going to make sure these aren't just abandoned after the World Cup and nothing happens to them? Like, a lot of people die to make these stadiums, and then after 2 months, they're never going to be used again, or rarely used again. Yeah, it seems like a lot just for the World Cup. What's the whole point? I've heard, sports washing is supposed to improve the image of Qatar. It's supposed to, bring them to the 21st century of Western culture and blah, blah, blah. But we all know that they're just going to use it to get good publicity. And then once all the cameras are away, they're going to go back to their old ways. Like, nah.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
It also says there were 50 work-related deaths in 2020 in Qatar as a whole, and that most of them were migrant construction workers. But the ILO acknowledges the limits to this data. It's called on Qatar to improve how it records deaths, in particular related to heat stroke.
That's like asking China to accurately record coronavirus deaths in the heat of coronavirus. We all know those shits were fake. We all know those figures were fake. So to have them come out with, 5 deaths in the last year due to heat stroke, we all know it's false.
There's also the environmental impact of this World Cup.
The Qatar World Cup has set a real example in sustainability and what can be achieved. I've never seen anything like this before.
Of course you haven't, David, because it doesn't happen. You're telling me that they can reduce their emissions or offset their emissions, toxic pollution and waste in the air due to all this construction. You really think they can offset those emissions, all the travel, all the energy that's going to be used in a nah. And this is the same David Beckham, right? Who claimed that they waited 17 hours in a line because he didn't feel like seeing the Queen on her, in her casket should be restricted to the, upper echelons of people who could just cut the line. He felt like he had to pay his dues and wait in line to see the Queen. But he's doing this. He's doing up Qatar. He's doing up Qatar like an Instagram baddie. Bruv, stop it. Don't give me that. He's getting paid. Let's just say that. He's getting that money.
Certainly we've never seen a World Cup with a carbon footprint like this before. Those stadiums, hotels, a new metro system, 1 million people flying in, it all comes at a cost. This is FIFA's emissions estimate for the last World Cup in Russia. Its estimate for Qatar is higher. But one UK university says it's likely to be much higher than that. Despite this, Qatar is making this claim.
Examples of the work we are doing include organising a fully carbon-neutral World Cup.
That's based on offsetting emissions, and this leading climate scientist isn't convinced.
The idea that they've somehow made it green by cheap, nasty so-called offsets that just don't undo the damage from the emissions at all, to become carbon neutral, that doesn't stack up at all.
What did I say?
There's one more issue too, LGBT rights. This is the message to fans.
We welcome everybody, but also we expect and we want people to respect our culture.
Ooh, now this is one of the hot button issues, right? I see a lot of, you've invited us to your country. You've said that this is going to be an inclusive space. You said this is going to be able to, bring people together. This is going to be great for Qatar and the whole world in general. But then there's the other side when people say, if you want to go and you can't respect their laws, don't go at all. It's a sticky situation. So I wonder what they're going to do. I wonder what they're going to do in terms of representation and allowing people to express themselves. I already hear there's a ban on people drinking alcohol. So they've already U-turned on that. I heard they were paying, people to come and support Qatar at the World Cup, even though they're not from Qatar, just paying random people online. And apparently they cut their fucking allowances. So the amount of money they'll be able to spend there, it's not going to be the same because they were paying them to be there and they were going to give them an allowance. Now the allowance is gone. So how are they going to pay for their food? Because I know Qatar prices aren't cheap, They aren't cheap. So if they're U-turning on this, only God knows what they're going to do to the LGBT community when they touch down. Because from what I hear, they don't like them people there.
And there's concern about what that means, because homosexuality is illegal in Qatar. This month, the Qatari World Cup ambassador described homosexuality as damage in the mind.
This is a sickness. It is deviant, therefore we don't want it.
According to Human Rights Watch, this year, LGBT people have been arrested and beaten.
Probably done worse than just beat them. Let's be honest. Yeah, if I would advise, if you're a part of the LGBT community, just sit this one out. It's not worth the risk to your health. It's really not.
And as we consider all of these concerns, let's remember where the last World Cup was. Russia, after Vladimir Putin had already annexed Crimea from Ukraine. Big sports events often come with political and cultural tensions and compromises. As well as that, as the former FIFA boss Sepp Blatter said about the decision to choose Qatar, of course, it was also about money.
So you're here with the former FIFA president after, officials getting fired, getting banned, getting arrested. You still have the former president saying, of course, it was always about the money. This is the hypocrisy of the world. Everything's got a price. If you want the World Cup to be in Qatar, out of all the countries in the world, out of France, the UK, America, African countries, Egypt, let's not say Iran, but the only reason that happened was because of the money. Shameless. Man. As soon as I saw my man in the press box, and then some protester came through and just dashed money in front of his face, I knew it was a wrap for my man still.
That's something Qatar has a lot of. This is how much was spent on each World Cup since 1990. This is what Qatar has spent. And after that kind of investment, this is FIFA's message.
Everything is ready and everyone is welcome.
Are they though? Everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome. This guy. Honestly, at this point, there's been more headlines before the World Cup that it makes the World Cup just look terrible. I'm not excited for it. I'm gonna try and watch it, but even getting off of the games is like stupid o'clock. First England games at 1 in the afternoon. Like, it's one of them. Once the curtain's pulled back and you really see all the fuckery that's been happening, you're just like, do I even want to support this? Is it even? This is not what they. It's all a facade. We all see it. The hypocrisy of the world. Oh, we want to be inclusive. We want to have this. We want to have that. We want to bring everyone in. But as soon as being inclusive and being fair to people, as soon as that comes in conflict with the money, inclusion, gay people, you have to bounce. That's just the way it is. Money talks. If money talks.
Then why the man they're speaking still?
In a letter to teams, Gianni Infantino has written, "We know football does not live in a vacuum," but he urged, please, let's now focus on the football. It's now for fans and players to decide to what extent they're willing to do so.
Damn. On that note, this World Cup is definitely going to be a tumultuous one. This World Cup is going to have a lot of people feeling some type of way. People are going to watch. I know people are going to be watching it. I'm probably going to be one of them. But it's not got the same chef's kiss as it usually does. I remember the one in Brazil, lit. The one in South Africa, of course, with that historic and memorable theme song by Shakira. Waka waka, hey hey. Well, on that note, I'm gonna waka waka, hey hey, away way. I've been your host Majaro, and you've been watching this edition of Pree Da Video, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.
I be kidding on my foes, even though I got it all on my own. Success sweet, yeah, it tastes like honeycomb. Dropping blood tears and even breaking bones. I'm sipping on Patron while aiming for the throne. I've been to hell and back and even